What's up, everybody? Tim from Tierphone Orbital here. Just going to do another rundown slash walkthrough slash build video for one of my most recent commissions. And obviously, you know, as usual, this will also serve as like a little walkthrough for the client as well. This was full install, you know, chassis design, Proffie install, the whole nine. This is the client sent me this along with a couple other Sabers, but this is the first one that I completed. Unfortunately, so let me just start off with the hilt itself. Okay, this is from Sabersmith. I think Nihil Sabers. So exchanged hands a couple of times over the years, but it landed with my client. Unfortunately, when the client got the hilt, I think what ended up happening was the chassis that was in this probably came loose from this grenade section or the crystal chamber section, and it was loose inside the grip. Client went to unscrew the handle, and it just got caught on something in here, and it just snapped. The whole chassis just snapped. It was one of those older FDM printed. Actually, it's an old. I don't know whether or not this is direct from Goth, or if whomever put it in initially just etched Goth into it, but this is an old FDM Goth chassis. Like, I don't think Rick even offers these as STL downloads anymore. So yeah, not sure where it came from, but this is the older, you know, I mean, FDM's kind of a little brittle. It wafers a lot. So this snapped inside the grip. So plan was to remove all the old electronics and remove the old chassis, design a new one, install everything from the ground up. And that's what I ended up doing. So what we'll do is, with this video, same as the others, I'll start at the bottom, work my way up, and I'll also talk a little bit about what goes into my chassis design process, and inspiration and all that stuff. So we will start at the bottom. So this is a beautiful scrap flex. Some of the parts are familiar to me, right? So I think this is a Saber forged grenade section. I think I actually, yeah, I've got a bunch of these in my bin of parts. So it's just been sliced to make a crystal chamber. Anyway, lots of really beautiful brass on the outside of this. This emitter piece, I don't know where this came from. It actually might not be real brass. Sorry. This actually may be like a steel part from. I don't know. It sure as heck looks like real brass, and like a custom cut. Because usually those Graflexes, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to reach out to Nihil Sabers and see where this came from. Anyway, looks like brass. It's etched, beautifully etched. Some Graflex pieces in here. There's a real Graflex bunny ears. There's an old glass eye here. I mean, really just a real nice scrap flex. You know, a New Hope style D-ring here, or is that Empire? Anyway, doesn't matter. So yeah. So let's talk about the chassis first, right? So when I get a commission, if it's either a custom scrap like this, or if it's a hilt that I've never designed a chassis for, what I do is I start with the basics, right? So I'll start with measuring inner diameter. I'll try to mock up whether or not we'll be able to work with a removable chassis, you know, or whatever the client wants. If they want a removable chassis, anything like that. So I'll start with making measurements, right? And then I'll go into Fusion and just make a blank tube and just build off of that, right? And this is what I ended up with for this particular scrap. I wanted to use a Keystone battery holder, so that's what this cavity is for. Keystone battery holder just kind of sits in here. But anyway, yeah, so I start with a tube, make some cuts to add room for greeblies, and and that's it. I mean, it sounds really simple. It took a lot of practice to get to this point. I had some 3D modeling experience prior to getting into this hobby, so I knew programs like Fusion and some other ones. So I knew how to navigate inside of the programs. So yeah, you really just want to make sure you got your digital calipers and make sure you're making measurements correctly. What I did with this also is the speaker chamber is fully enclosed. So this whole speaker just kind of rests in here. This chasm or channel here is for a real brass ring. I ended up putting a brass ring in here, and we'll show you that when I demo the chassis. Added my greeblies. These are all greeblies that I created or grabbed from Thangiverse or whatever, and converted them to step files so I could edit faces and make them bigger or smaller, however I wanted. And yeah, oh, here it is. Here's the infamous Lucasfilm greebly. This is like their universal greebly. I try to throw this into a lot of my chassis. Not a lot of people know what this is, but the ones who do, I always commend them because this is a famous Lucasfilm greebly. I mean, they use this for everything. It can be a hatch, it can be a ship, it can be a porthole, it can be anything. And they use it in everything. I think Adam Savage has mentioned before that this is just a universal greebly and they use it for everything. So anyway, so that's my chassis design process, right? In a really quick nutshell. This is probably one of my favorite parts of any build, this and doing crystal chambers. This is like drawing to me. It's very cathartic. You got to be careful though. Like when you start designing stuff, you can kind of get lost in the design and forget how small you're making things. Like if you make a detail too small, you're not even going to see it in the print anyway. So it's easy to just go overboard. I tried to keep this as simple as possible. And I also had room here for mixed media. So I'll show you when we come down to the up close of the chassis. I added real wiring in here and some real resistors, just to kind of mix it up, right? All right, so back up top here. Let's take a look on the inside, right? So grip unscrews. Man, this is a heavy grip. This has got to be steel. It's just really super heavy. Cover tech, ring. Right, so here's the chassis. What I ended up doing was painting this chassis by hand. I feel to go in line with the older look of the Scrap, I wanted to make sure some of those details popped, so I painted some stuff. Buff and rub and buffed the chassis body with some bronze, okay, to make it look a little bit aged. Some copper rings in here, real copper. And here's that brass ring I was talking about. So I put that in that channel so that the idea is sometimes when you've got a chassis that is off center a millimeter or two, or it's just a little bit catching the end of the inside of the grip, this ring is just to help with some friction on the inside of that grip. But it's also decorative. So yeah, just a long description on a decorative piece that I hope is functional, but it probably isn't. It just really looks nice. Anyway, Proffie V2 kill switch is in here. 28 millimeter. This is actually a KR Sabers speaker, bass speaker, I think. So 28 millimeter. The chassis, much like the older chassis, I designed it so that these two prongs that are here for the crystal chamber, they go into the top of the chassis and kind of sit there. The chassis is actually E6000 to the body of this. I didn't want to mess with putting too many set screws in here because I did not want to mess with these threads. These are really, really thin threads, right? So it's really secure. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's safe in there. It's also going into these prongs, so I'm pretty confident in how secure the chassis is sitting in there. The original build had one single Neo underneath this crystal, and it was actually not. It wasn't directed up towards the crystal. It looked like it had been hot glued to the bottom of this screw that's holding the crystal up, but it wasn't even pointing up towards the crystal. So it didn't have the most optimal shine through. So reoriented that, and I also added a second Neopixel up top. And I created a custom resin Neo holder that is sitting above the crystal up in here. So the Neo holder actually goes above these two prongs here, and it just kind of sits in there, press fit, and the Neo's in the middle there, and they're both one blade. So more shine through, it's a lot brighter. So yeah, the crystal is the one that came with it, real quartz. This is a, I'm actually not familiar with where this button came from, but it's a single button setup. Looks to be another like Saber Forge parts. This actually looks like a knob from a lamp. I've seen these before. I don't know exactly where it's from. Yeah, your brass pins are here. Graflex brass pins, an old, super old glass eye. I mean, this is just super unique part. Like, I don't know if, I can't really tell, actually, if this was an old steel Graflex hood that was faux brass patina with like some surfing, like chemical patina, or if this is an all brass part that was created. I mean, it has to be an old steel Graflex, actually, now that I think about it. That was probably chemically treated with surfing to make it look like brass. Either way, it's a beautiful, beautiful hilt, right? So, oh, and CC Sabers emitter, PCB emitter was already installed, so we just reused that. I think that's it in a rundown. The Proffie is kind of press fit in here. If SD card access is needed, the Proffie can flip up a little bit, and you can get your micro USB in there. I don't know why I can't talk today. You can get your micro USB in there for any of that, and you can also pop your SD card out if you need to. Loaded with a bunch of fonts already. All right, so let's do a little demo action. Okay. No need to worry about it grabbing the chassis anymore. So, like I said, single button setup. There's your nice and bright crystal, a lot brighter than what it was. Twist to activate, and twist to deactivate. 28 millimeter sounds good. Now to change fonts on a single button setup, I put FET's prop file in here. So it's a long press.
I am no Jedi.
Long press of the button while the saber is pointed up, and that'll change your font forwards. And I think, yeah, so sideways is a long press while the saber is off. Sideways will go back a font. Nihil, that's a font. I don't know. It was already on the SD card. I just figured might as well put it in the config because this is a Nihil build.
Lord Vader. Font directory too long.
Gonna fix that in your config. It's an incredibly long blade off sound. I didn't even know when it ended. So, really quick, that was it's a quick guide on this scrap. I mean, again, this is just it was a beautifully made saber. We just updated it, really. Yeah, I'm a big fan of scraps. Lately, I'm going through a Koran phase right now, but scrap is something I'd like to get to. doing like a custom tier font scrap. But that being said, just a beautiful, beautiful hilt. This will go in line with the other 4 that I've got to get out to this client. So I'm going to edit the config a little bit, make sure we're catching all the fonts correctly. As you could hear, there was a font that was probably misconfigured in the SD card, or it's missing from the config. So we'll fix that. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful hilt. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Just hope I gave somebody some inspiration, or, you know, as I always say, if anybody needs any help, feel free to reach out, and I'll do what I can to assist. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. May the force be with you.